I am k.v.Setti, lecturer in PSR Law College, Kakinada, affiliated to Adikavi Nannaya University, Rajamahendravaram, East Godavari district, Andhra Pradesh. Today I teach Constitutional Law 1. The topic is Indian National Congress 1885, Social Reforms versus Political Independence, Protest against British, JalionWalaBhag and Rowlatt Act. Formation of Indian National Congress. Moderate phase 1885-1905. Background of the INC. Broadly speaking, the history of the freedom struggle can be divided into distinct phases as Free Gandhian period 1885 to 1919 and post Gandhian period 1919 to 1947. The movement for Indians' independence began with the establishment of the Indian National Congress in 1885. After establishing the 1885 Indian National Congress, the agitation movements against the British was started. Even whom a retired ICS officer was instrumental in the formation of Indian National Congress. At that juncture, when the British curbed the Indians, the eminent leaders thought there must be an association to ask the Britishers for our rights and freedom. With the inspiration of whom some of the eminent leaders of India formed the Indian National Congress in 1885. Without having any radical ideas, moderates wanted the removal of injustice done to Indians by the British bureaucrats and demanded certain reforms in the administration, constitutional and economic spheres. The moderates like Gandhi and other leaders, they wanted to create some rights in the administration as well as in political governance to the Indians. They are not absolutely against the British government. Whom invited the eminent Indians from different parts of the country to meet at Pune from 25th to 28th December 1885. But the venue of the meeting was shifted to Bombay as Pune became infected with cholera. During that period, seriously the cholera was prevailed and infected to the people in Poland, and number of several deaths are occurred. Due to that fear, they came into conclusion it is the best place to conduct the meeting of Indian National Congress at Bombay. The first session of the All India Congress began on 28th December 1885 at Gokul Das Tejpal Sanskrit College. Eminent barrister of Calcutta, Mr. Umesh Chandra Banerjee, president over it. He was elected as president in the first session. "72 delegates were invited from different parts of India, assembled in this first session. Mr. whom was elected as the first General Secretary of the Indian National Congress. 9 reservations were passed in this first session. Moderate phase. The first phase of 20 years of its life, the Indian National Congress was controlled by the moderates. The leader of this period were Dadabhai Nauroji, Mahadev Govinda Ranade, Gopalakrishna Gokhale, W.C. Banerjee, S.N. Banerjee, Feroz Mehta, etc. All of them belonged to educated middle class and had very modest objectives. Having faith in the honesty and sincerity of the British government, they linked the progress of India with their prosperity. Moderate phase demands. The moderates are demanded to protect of the civil rights of Indians, like freedom of speech and freedom of press. And also they demanded a right to organize public meetings and processions. The moderates demanded the British government to provide some immunities or exemptions to conducting public meetings to discuss their difficulties and about their welfare. The moderates also demanded separation of judiciary from the executive and removal of the Vernacular Press Act. At that time, the British government, the Indian British government, imposed some restrictions on the press, and some rights are curtailed of the press people. And also they demanded for judiciary should be separate, the judiciary from the executive. Suppose both are running simultaneously, the discretionary power of the government may be turned into arbitrary power. So they demanded to separate the judicial power from the executive. And they demanded the appointment of Royal Commission to examine the Indian administration. They also demanded for Indian representation in the Indian Council at London and in the executive councils of the centre and provinces. Instead of that of demanding complete independence for India, the moderates only asked for a larger number of elected representatives in the central and provincial legislatures. Moderates only followed the method of prayer, petition, representation, deputation, and perusal of which their approach was criticized as political mendicancy. The other leaders, like extremists, criticized the methods of the moderates. The protest against the Indian British government rule. The JalionWalaBhag massacre was occurred. The JalionWalaBhag massacre, also known as the Amritsar massacre, took place on 13th April 1919. Like this, rebellion organizations born due to the strict and illegal activities of the government against the Indian people. When acting Brigadier General Reginald Dyer ordered troops to the British Indian Army to fire their rifles into a crowd of unarmed Indian civilians in JalionWalaBhag, Amritsar, Punjab, killing at least 1,000 people and injuring over 1,500 other people. On Sunday, 13th April 1919, Dyer convinced a major insurrection could take place, banned all meetings. This notice was not widely disseminated, and many villagers gathered in the bog to celebrate the important Indian festival of Vaishakhi and peacefully protest the arrest and deportation of two national leaders, Satyapal and Saifuddin Kichli. Dyer and his troops entered the garden, blocking the main entrance. Behind them, took up position on a raised bank, and with two warnings opened fire on the crowd for about 10 minutes, directing their bullets largely towards the few open gates through which people were trying to flee until the ammunition supply was almost exhausted. The following day, Dyer stated in a report that I have heard that between 200 and to 300 of the crowd were killed. My party fired 1,605 rounds. Dyer was landed for his actions by some in Britain and indeed became a hero, announcing many of those who were directly benefiting from the British Raj, such as members of the House of Lords. He was, however, widely denounced and criticized in the House of Commons, whose 1920 committee of investigation censured him because he was a soldier acting on orders. He could not be tried for murder. The military chose not to bring him before a court martial, and his only punishment was to be removed from his current appointment, turned down for a proposed promotion, and barred from further employment in India. Dyer subsequently retired from the army and returned to England, where he died unrepentant about his actions in 1927. The ineffective inquiry, together with the initial accolades for Dyer, fueled the great widespread anger the British among the Indian people, leading to the non-cooperation movement of 1922. Some historians consider the episode a decisive step towards the end of British rule in India. Britain never formally apologized for the massacre but expressed regret in 1890. Rowlatt Act. Sidney Rowlatt, best remembered for his controversial presidency of the Rowlatt Committee, a sedition committee appointed in 1919 by the British India government to evaluate the links between political terrorism in India. The Anarchical Revolutionary Crimes Act of 1919, popularly known as the Rowlatt Act or Black Act, was a Legislative Council Act passed by the Imperial Legislative Council in Delhi on 18 March 1919, independently extending the emergency measures of preventive identity, detention, incarceration without trial, and judicial review enacted in the Defense of India Act 1915. During the First World War, it was enacted in light of a perceived threat from revolutionary nationalists of organizations of re-engaging in similar conspiracies as during the war, which the government left the lapse of the Defense of Indian Act would enable. It was the Rowlatt Act which brought Gandhi to the mainstream of Indian struggle for independence and ushered in the Gandhi era of Indian politics. The British government passed the Rowlatt Act, which gave powers to the police to arrest any person without any reason whatsoever. The purpose of the act was to curb the growing nationalist unsearch in the country. Gandhi called upon the people to do satyagraha against such oppressive act. Passed on the recommendations of the Rowlatt committee and named after its president British Judge Sir Sidney Rowlatt. This act effectively authorized the government to imprison any person suspected of terrorism living in British India for up to 2 years without a trial, and gave the imperial authorities power to deal with all revolutionary activities. The army was called into Punjab, and on 13 April people from neighboring villages gathered for Baisakhi Day celebrations and to protest against deportation of two important Indian leaders in Amritsar, which led to the infamous JalionWalaBhag massacre in 1919. Accepted the report of the laws committed, the Government of India repealed the Rowlatt Act, the Press Act and 22 other laws in March 1922.